You're listening to the Aesthetically Speaking podcast, presented by Nextech.
Hey guys, we are live here in San Diego at AAD, and welcome back to the Aesthetically Speaking podcast. My name is Tyler Terry. I'm your host, and I'm here with my co-host, Robin Ntoh. Robin?
Hey, Tyler. It's so exciting to be here at AAD. There's a lot of energy out here. There's a lot of people on the floor. It's day one. It's go time here.
It really is go time, and there really is an energy that you can feel. As soon as I walked in, I forgot how big this conference hall is, and it's really a reflection of the industry. It's a reflection of the specialty. Let's start off with this question, and it might be obvious, but we're talking today about patient education, but it's kind of a broad term. When we're talking patient education, what do we mean by that, and why is it important to an aesthetic practice?
Honestly, Tyler, I think that patient education is just probably one of the things that most people don't pay attention to. We just kind of make it a process that we've been doing for so long that we don't even think about, well, is there a different way to do it? Is there a better way to do it? Is there something that could be more engaging, that could really work better for my practice or for my patients in general? And so a lot of times we just take it for granted that they're either going to figure it out themselves, or they've already cruised the internet. They've got all those sources out there. But is that really the best way to do it? I don't know. What do you think?
You know, I feel like patient education is a timeless topic. And, it's something that, our various technologies has focused on for a long time, but it's become a hot topic today. And I think it's for, a multitude of reasons. It's so important now more than ever for practices to focus on patient education for everything that they offer, every product, every procedure, every service. And it's important because the practice should take that to heart, should take the fact that they need to, it's imperative for them to build out content that is important for the patient, videos to watch, before and afters to look at, testimonials to read and review. But when we think of paper oftentimes gets outdated so quickly, even in a matter of days. Right. And things change, technologies change. And so it's important to have a digital format so that you can update things in real time.
Oh my gosh, that was a lot to unload because there's so much about education today that we just don't think about. Think about 5 generations. Everybody's got a different way that they consume information. Everybody has different media formats that are important to them. And so, you know what? Today's digital society, why don't we think about what are the ways that we can do it better? And how do people really take that and process it and put it into their practices and really make it useful? I think about something as simple as TouchMD. That is a great format. We only think photos whenever we think TouchMD, but there's a lot about TouchMD that's really focused around education. Tell us a little bit about your experiences when you think of patient education when it relates to TouchMD.
TouchMD, at its core, is a patient education platform. And you've actually brought this up, Robin, where you've said it really is a content delivery platform. It's a multimedia delivery platform. It is a way to deliver content to the patient before they come in the office, in the consult room, on the patient app. But what's so important about it, and the best way that I've seen it used, is at the point of care, in the room while the patient is waiting. And it makes them feel like they're not waiting. And it also signals to the patient that the practice is invested in technology. And even more so than that, they're invested in the experience, the total experience for the patient. And so, when you think of content, like what kind of content should I be promoting or should I be feeding to my patients? And of course, it should always be updated, and it should be signed off, and it should be meaningful to the practice based on, how they like to talk about a certain service. If it's Morpheus8, well, maybe they don't call it by the device. Maybe they call it by the treatment type or the body type. But, instead of it just being out of the can, out of the box from the actual company, for the practice to actually put their spin on it, to actually sprinkle their brand onto it, and to be able to have videos for the patient to watch, before and afters for the patient to look at, and then testimonials and reviews for the patient to consume. But the most important part is there is this aspect of control for the patient. We want the patient to drive, to choose, to select. And the common denominator of what we're trying to accomplish, of course, is a better educated patient, but we want the patient to feel confident and comfortable. And that's what patient education is doing. We want them to feel confident and comfortable so that they have better questions for the provider.
You know, you bring up a good point. Patients want to be in control, and people want options in today's society. And there's so many different ways for us to consume things when you think about it. I mean, if I don't know how to do something, I can go look at YouTube and it'll tell me how to do it. I mean, it's just so easy to get information at our fingertips. And a lot of times healthcare, which should be one of the focus points on where I find good information, just really isn't. You see information out there on the internet or YouTube, but it's really those practices or companies that have made an effort to put it out there, but it's generic. It's not necessarily, focused just on that practice. And so I look at this as not only how the patient can really learn about a brand, but also really learn about a practice. Practices strive to differentiate themselves. So we think about it, got a website, got my look and feel on my website, I've got before and after photos. Those things tell a story. They talk about me as a physician, as a practice, how I look, how I feel, what I present. But a lot of times we don't think about how we educate and where that differentiates. And like you said, I love the concept of the patient comes in and they sit in the exam room or in the waiting room and they're introduced to this as soon as they walk in the door. Think about it this way. Once I get into the exam room, if my patient has already had an opportunity to learn about all this, I could actually, as a provider, probably really focus on a treatment plan because they probably already pre-selected where they think they're going to have the best outcome. Now, as a provider, you still want to make that decision. You want to do your assessment and your plan. But if you go back and think about that whole education just set the stage. So now you don't have to spend as much time in the exam room. You don't have to spend as much time explaining something. So I love that you brought that up because I think that is a gateway. It's an entry point. We just assume everybody figures it out on the internet before they come in. But when they walk in the door, instead of them waiting and going through their own device, why not give them something that lets them start learning about you?
Yeah.
Much better way of thinking about it,
Yeah, 100%. And you brought up so many points that I want to talk about. One is timing. The timing of delivering content to the patient, not just content, but even not just, videos to watch and before and afters, but their pre and post-op instructions and their photos and their recommendations and their treatment plan. And timing is such a crucial element to delivering content to the patient. And it's why the content matters in the very beginning. We want patients, ideally in a perfect world, we want patients to get this content from the practice. It's been signed off by the practice before they come in. But we know that patients are busy. And because they're busy, they probably didn't have enough time to even do it. So what we would do is we would actually carve out those, 3 to 7 minutes pre-consult. And that right there arms the patient so that they feel, again, confident and comfortable in that service. And it makes them more aware of other services that are offered. The other thing that we talk about is how do we signal to the patient everything that we offer? And a lot of times we think that, if I just put Xeomin under injectables and fillers, or if I put Xeomin under a certain subtopic, they're just going to know that, of course, that's a competition to Botox. It's just like Botox. But oftentimes patients don't know that. Number one, they don't even know to call it Xeomin. And they don't even know, to even pronounce it like that. So we almost have to put ourselves in the shoes of the patient and remember that it's about how they feel and what they're looking for because it's obviously a service for them. So
I think a lot of times, though, people have website fatigue. There's so many websites and they kind of say a lot of the same things. I mean, the physicians or providers' bios, maybe a different look on the waiting room, maybe some before and after photos if they're done well and consistently. But I think the first approach to a lot of these patients of really engaging with the practice is that first experience when they come in the waiting room. And you said something profound that a lot of people just take for granted. You can't assume people know what services you offer. They may be in for a full body skin exam and may not be aware that you actually have aesthetic treatments, that you do Botox, that you have an esthetician, that you treat wrinkles and other things other than just skin cancer. So a lot of times we just assume we get caught up in how we think of things. And so as a way to introduce those services, you've just given so much more opportunity. And I think one of the best parts about it is I'm not worried about teaching my staff as much to do that. Obviously, they want to know how to answer the questions.
Of course.
But a lot of times I think about we're constantly struggling with new staff, new team members, and God knows they've got so much to do at check-in. Now you want me to educate this patient on 10 different services so I can upsell today? They just don't have the time. And so we put too much on them, and now we're thinking, why am I not doing any more sales? Why don't we have any upsells? A lot of times you're just expecting too much of the people part versus letting technology really work for you. And you know what I love about TouchMD? They can even do their consents there too.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not just education, you know?
Yeah, and it's one less app to download, one less portal to log into. We're at a dermatology conference.
Yep.
One of my good friends, her name's Dr. Sharon Stokes in Kissimmee, Florida. And she was one of the first that I've seen, dermatologist-wise, to use TouchMD to educate her medical patients. And what she told me was that she was having a hard time, or her and her staff didn't feel comfortable promoting and pushing those aesthetic services on a medical patient that's here for something else. But when she handed them TouchMD and they're here for their acne or they're here for whatever the case may be, and she allowed them to be in the driver's seat and for them to be able to browse, the numbers were crazy. It was like in the mid 30s of 30, it was like 35% of patients were asking about an aesthetic service. And this is almost 10 years ago. This is in 2015. And that was her favorite thing about the technology, and her staff's favorite thing about the technology is because they weren't having to really push it. They got to just give them this beautiful menu for the better care of their patients, and they're here for that skin condition. And then patients are like, actually, this is great. I want to hit back, and I do want to see that you offer whatever the case may be. I want to see that you offer hydrofacial and all the different services that you offer. So it's pretty profound, when I heard that. And, many other dermatologists feel the same way, using the technology.
Totally agree with you. You think about what you just said, the upselling part of it is key, but now my patients don't have to feel like they're being sold to.
Mm-hmm.
And your staff don't have to be salesmen. And now you've just kind of put it in the hands of the patient. I mean, think of it kind of like instead of them cruising through Instagram while they're in the office,
which they do,
could be going through your app or your information that kind of focuses on all the great things that you do in the business. And there's nothing wrong with them getting more education about it. And it may be that it plants the seed for today. And they may walk out the door and buy a bunch of products and or schedule other treatments simply because they learned more about you while they were waiting in the waiting room versus sitting there in the waiting room, staring at the walls or looking at the TV or getting more frustrated because they're waiting. So it totally is a game changer, in my opinion. If I think about a lot of the practices that do this, it is key for them,
Yeah. If you look at some of the other specialties that Nextech is in, ophthalmology, Nextech's the leader in ophthalmology. And being in an ophthalmology practice, I feel like they've perfected the art of moving the patient from room to lane to room to essentially not really feel like they're waiting. And that is another aspect of this. You want patients to know that you value their time. And, going back to the timing is key, but you need to assume that this is just part of the experience. Even if it's a patient that's been with you for 5+ years, 10+ years, make it part of their experience. Reintroduce them to the practice. Maybe they've been coming to you for toxin and filler for the last however many years, but maybe they didn't realize that they might want threads or whatever the case may be. There's so many new services that are being offered. And when you think of consistency, like we think of, hey, we want to have the best level of service when the front desk answers the phone, right? That's the lead-off batter for the practice, and they're amazing. But we also want to have consistency in all the other things. You talked about streamlining, and we're asking our staff and our team to do so much. This alleviates that pain right out of the gate. And you need to really, in any service that you're offering, in any software that you use, you need to be all in, number one, and be confident in the fact that it is going to help you. It is going to help your practice, and it's also going to help your patient. And when you do that and you hand the patient the iPad in the room and you offer that digital menu, it really, I mean, the magic just kicks off right there.
You said something intriguing that I want to follow up with. When you have staff turnover, you can see a dip in revenue. And it could be significant if you're using that staff member to really focus on upsells. And they could have been a rock star. They're out sick. Maybe they're out for vacation. But do you really want your practice that you have kept at a level state that's been selling X to really go through that change? You don't have to. If you really start using some of the tools that I think are going to be more digital, then you're going to drive more continuity in your practice. And you still want your staff to be part of that. You want them to do that. But, I think a lot of practices don't look at this as being multifunctional. They think of it as just being more about, like I said before, those before and after photos. They don't think about all the different ways that they can use to educate. And education is not just for after treatment. Education is a big part of how you set expectations. And I think that sometimes that's, left in the hands of the staff, that may be where they miss those details. Those details that are important.
So important.
Oh, completely important.
I'm sitting here thinking, we're talking about TouchMD being a way to educate patients, but we almost need to backtrack a little bit and think of what are the probing questions? What are other solutions or experiences that we can offer to a patient to uncover the fact that they might want something else? And one that came to mind as you were speaking was capturing a picture of the patient and using that precious, I talk about the golden minutes, 3 to 7 minutes prior to rooming them, using those golden minutes to arm them again with, I took your picture, I'm going to pull it up on the iPad, I'm going to give you a little Apple Pencil here, and we're going to use those 5 to 7 minutes, 3 to 7 minutes to allow you to circle areas that you'd like to enhance. And what happens if we took 5 angles? We took that right side, right 3/4 front, left 3/4 left side. We put them on one single picture, one single image. And what would happen if I was able to finally give you some time, some me time, some you time to look at your picture, just you and that photo in the room, or those 5 photos. And Ashley, you can circle all the different things that have been maybe bugging you. Maybe you didn't even notice because you're looking at the mirror straight on every day and you're not really noticing that maybe you have some submental fat, maybe you have some sunspots, maybe you have things that you just weren't really thinking about. And we're really hoping that you go after this self-care component for yourself, for you. So
Yeah, no, I think so many different ways that you can look at this. You don't really have to put all the literature all over the front desk anymore. You don't have to have all the educational conversations with them. You can upsell, you can cross-sell, you can educate, all in the waiting room without a lot of effort. And you don't have to have your practice held hostage, so to speak, by staff that may come and go and may not always know it, or they don't feel comfortable selling. So I think we really have talked a lot about how you build up into before they actually see the provider. And, I also think there's a lot of opportunity after they see the provider. They've seen the provider, they're ready to leave, and now they've got to make a decision. And it may be a surgical decision. It may be a decision around, a treatment plan. It may be multiple treatments. There's a lot of different ways that you can think about it. But people just can't remember everything. I mean, people remember on average 10% of what you give them. And maybe they just heard something that's a little frightening, like, okay, you've got a basal cell. And that could be a little frightening. And they go home and now they've got to consume that. And now all those instructions that had just been imparted to them, we're going to do surgery on X and we're going to do it here. And this is a recovery. And they didn't hear any of it. And they generally don't. And what do? They pick up the phone. They call the office. I mean, I've pulled offices and they're like, I was in a meeting not too long ago speaking, and I asked the audience, I said, so what is it, 5 calls? And they're like, no, keep going up.
Oh my gosh.
10 calls? No, keep going. I said, are you kidding me? Yeah. And they said it could be up to 20 calls sometimes after a patient leaves a practice because they just didn't understand everything about it, because it's to them significant. You say the word cancer and of course they're freaking out.
Yes.
And so now they're just trying to find a way to consume that information. And a lot of times we think they're going to remember, or we give them a piece of paper and they don't really remember it.
No.
So they're going to go look for it someplace else. So I think, I don't know. I mean, what are some other ways that you've seen practices utilize TouchMD for that post-visit education?
Yeah. Wow. Well, first off, I want to say I can't believe that it's upwards of 20 calls. I would have guessed if you said, Tyler, how many do you think? And I would say 2 to 5, maybe.
They have a memory problem?
Yeah. Like, wait, are all patients? Are you sure exactly? Is it the memory?
No. It's what they said. I was in a conference, 50 people in the room, and that's what they were saying. Yeah.
Wow. Which, I mean, makes what I'm about to say even more important, but I had no idea. So, the best way is, number one, you have to give patients something that they want to look at. Like, you have to give them a reason to even log back in. And we know those reasons, right? Number one, of course, patient education that's curated by the practice. Right. Amazing. 2 would be their photos. So you want to tuck those photos in to the patient app so that they can go in and look at them. Now, a pain point for the patient is they don't want multiple apps. So if we can have one app, and we're going to talk about this My TouchMD app, one app for patients to view their photos, review their pre and post-op instructions, sign their consents or intake forms. They can send you a HIPAA-compliant selfie through the app, which can maybe cut down on some calls.
Yeah, right.
They can browse through all the services.
HIPAA-compliant. That's the other part. You remember?
Yeah, the HIPAA-compliant.
How many times do doctors take pictures on their phones? Oops.
Yes, exactly. Right? I know. And that's crazy, too. That's a whole nother...
Yeah, another topic.
Another topic. But that's, I mean, almost the majority. Yeah. Definitely the majority of doctors that come up and show me, and they'll literally just pull it out on their phone and start showing me. I'm like, should I be looking at this?
Right.
But yeah, so, you want to get, number one, give patients something to give them an incentive to log in. Now, a lot of practices, prior to us consulting them on, hey, this is a way for you to get patients to download the app, but they would have a hard time getting patients excited to do it. So you need that enthusiasm by the patient. You need to dangle a carrot in front of them, which is usually their photos. They want to look at those.
Yep.
And then you also give them some kind of safety measures of, hey, your pre and post-op instructions are tucked in there. Everything you need is going to be in this app. And then we're also, so a way to get them to download the app, number one is, hey, we're going to send you some kind of speakeasy, under the radar specials that we don't promote on social. We don't send out via email.
Great idea.
We only send them out through this push notification to you. So you're getting kind of the under the radar MVP, VIP access.
And who doesn't want to be a VIP, right?
Yes, we all do. I know I do for sure.
Totally.
And okay, so all right, so not only do I get to see my photos, my consents are there, my pre and posts are there. I can see some patient education and I can send you photos. Cool. I get access to some specials. Now, we tested out like 10 different ways to get patients to download the app. We did, giveaways and just a bunch of different things with multiple practices. I think this was like 18 practices. The number one way was as simple as $10 off every time the patient showed the app to check out. So when they're checking out, show that you have the app, you're logged in, great, get $10 off your service. And because of that, the extra value is you can send out those specials and events, just like Starbucks sending push notifications via the Starbucks app. You essentially have your own Starbucks patient app that patients have on their phone, and you can target market. Something we haven't talked about is not only can you see what they're looking at and how many times they log in, but you can market based on what they're looking at. So you're fishing within your own pond. Your pond is your TouchMD system.
Right.
Patients are looking at Kiss for their lips. You can say, I have a special on Kiss. I want to send it out to everyone that's ever looked at the Kiss product, from home through the app, in the office, in the room.
Amazing.
And you can even dial it in to say, I want to send it out to anybody that I've ever tagged their photo as cool sculpting or lips. Or maybe you find that your hydrofacial patients are great, prospects for lips, and your lips are great prospects for hydrofacial, or whatever the case may be. But that's the value. So we're trying to really take it to the next level and have this proactive approach to say, yeah, you should get your patients. There's a value for the patients to download the app, but there's also a value to your practice because you can market to them.
Wow. And we always talk about retention, and we always talk about how much it costs to get a new patient versus retaining an existing patient. So, what better way to do it is to cross-sell and upsell to those existing patients based upon something that they've already shown interest on. It's pretty cool. Let's go back to, we were talking about when a patient gets all that educational information and they're leaving, and I know there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I think of how a practice actually differentiates themselves. People will go home and they say the second highest search option on the internet is YouTube.
Wow.
I mean, that's amazing if you think about it. And 1 in 15 searches is healthcare related.
Wow.
So if everybody's out there using YouTube, if you've just told someone that they've got a basal cell and they want to understand, well, what is a Mohs surgery? Or tell me a little bit, I want to understand more what the outcome's going to look like. What am I going to feel like? They're going to look it up on the internet, and they're going to look at a video because it's consumable, it's visual, it's easy. And then they're going to get their questions answered. And guess what? That could actually be someone else's practice. And you may have lost your patient because someone else was able to present it better. So I think about this is a calling card as well. It's a differentiator. It separates you out from everybody else. And a lot of practices are looking for different ways to differentiate. And so, I don't know, I mean, you've been around this for a long time. Have you seen any really cool examples of it?
Yeah, I think it really starts from the time the patient calls in and from the time the patient is in the waiting room. And I think it's maximizing every point of the journey, maximizing their experience in the waiting room, in the consult room, in the photo room. When they go home, how do we make the most of every point of reference where the patient is? I would say, going back to this experience of marketing to the patient or to educating the patient, what I've seen is we focus so much on getting the patient in the door, and we focus so much, which we should spend money to get patients to come in, and those are your marketing dollars, and we talk about marketing. But what if you could disguise your marketing as an education, and you start to rethink, how do I market to the patient more creatively and as more of a value to the patient? And the best way I've seen that would be actually on, a lot of different ways, but one of my favorites is actually on that patient app. So we have the value, that intrinsic value of them landing on the app, which we know they do. 78% of patients will log in within 24 hours. And of those 78% of patients, they log in 5 times within 30 days. So they're on it. They're hardly ever deleting it. Most apps are deleted quite a bit, like 30 in the 30% range. Our patient app is in the low, it's like 4%. So we know that 96% of patients are keeping the app on their phone. And when they're on the app, you could imagine if you're on this app, you pull out your phone, and about a third of the real estate at the top of the screen, kind of like YouTube actually, would be the video player. So subliminally and subtly, ads are playing at the top. But we actually go one step further, and we allow the patient to skip the ad. So they can skip it if they don't want to see it. They can pause it if they want to pause it. They can heart it if they're interested. And the volume is off by design, so it's not annoying. So we're trying to think of, all right, how do we not annoy the patient? How do we provide value to the patient and the practice at the same time, all while letting the patient drive? So I go back to, you brought up YouTube, and we think of social media. Those platforms are designed to get us to obviously stay on the app or the interface, and also to creatively market to us as we're browsing through it. And that would be my challenge for anybody that's listening, to think of your favorite applications, whether it's Pinterest, I'm on YouTube all the time. Think of those experiences and design those experiences for your patients, and start to think of the UI, think of that experience, and extend it well outside of your website, because everybody has a website, as you should. And you should even design that website based on how you like to consume content. What reward system do you like to use? Oh, you use Starbucks? Great. Oh, it's your Amex credit card? Great. What is it about Amex that you like? How is Amex educating you on why you should continue to have that card every year? Well, now we need to educate our patients.
And increase the fees, too.
And increase the fees.
Right?
So how do we do that? How do we get patients to understand the value of your membership and to continue to pay that, even if it was to increase? And then how do we educate them all along the way? That's what I would say.
Value is a key word there. If you think about that, a lot of times we don't understand what value is. And practices may not even understand what their value props are, what defines them as different. Value is important.
It is.
There's a lot to unpack there when you think about value. There's value around the different services you provide, value around the products that you recommend, value just in using the providers that are in your practice because of their education. Like you said, it goes back into how we build our content, how we manage our content, and how we actually put that in front of our patients and they consume it. And today's consumers are going to look at all different digital formats. We did a webinar last week, our social media expert. And yes, Nextech has a social media expert because, you got to be relevant.
You do. And she's amazing.
And she is amazing, I'm telling you. And she keeps us honest. We got to taking pictures whenever we're out and about.
Yep.
But authenticity was one of the things that she was driving home. And I think about, where more authentic are you than in your own practice around your own staff doing your own procedures? And how relevant is it to get that out there to those patients? Whether you're consuming it or recording it or putting that content together to go out on social media, you can also think about, well, how does that fit into my long-term education and how you put that out there in your TouchMD app? So, we talked a lot about TouchMD. So I'm sure everybody's wanting to know, is it easy for people to add content to TouchMD?
Yeah, so there's two ways. One, what makes it easy is the fact that you can actually utilize your client success advisor and our team. We have a team who will literally assist you with adding the content. So it's very turnkey. Number one, if we want to add any of your own custom content. Number two, we partner with all these different brands. So we have about 95% of what's out there. So we're in this room. We should have over 90% of the content just in this room alone. And we try to keep it updated as much as we can, but that content comes out of the box. So it's almost like we're bringing these brands to life on the platform. So for example, if the practice offered an Allergan product, you could search within the content, all the different brands. You could just search Allergan. You could search Cool Sculpting. You can search Volbella. And then that content will pop up. You check it. And you literally go through, it's from, it's in alphabetical order, but you can quickly search for anything that you offer. What I love too is, you spend $250,000 on a device and it's worth it. But what tools are you also adding to ensure the optimal success, not just for your practice, but for your patient?
Right.
And a lot of times we forget about patient education. How do we educate the patient on this Emsculpt Neo device that I just bought that has a lot of value for the patient? But if I just spent, $30,000 over the last few months getting patients in the door, we don't want it to stop there. We want to make sure that patient has the highest likelihood of moving forward if it's right for him or her. And we want to arm that patient with education so that they have better questions. So typically, the recipe for it would be a better educated patient will ask better questions, and with better questions, tease up the provider to have better answers. And when you have this, perfect trifecta, that's what leads to higher conversion rates.
Oh my gosh, completely. I'm just sitting here thinking about, this isn't something people don't want. There's TikTok.
Yeah.
There's Instagram.
Yep.
There's Facebook. And everybody is going out there to learn and educate. And they've got the choices that they want. So it's not like you're marching down a path in a direction where your consumers won't want this. They won't use it.
They want it.
And yeah, exactly. People want this. They're hungry. And you think about these practices that are looking for ways to actually invigorate as well as infuse their practice with, different ways to get those treatments out there and to really get their patients in front of it and give them more awareness.
Yeah.
I think we work too hard and we make it too hard when all the tools are right there in front of us.
Right there.
It's just easy.
I know, it's crazy because you actually think about it. What happens if you don't do it? What happens if, and this is happening in the majority of practices, patients, they're going to turn to somebody or a platform or a profile on social media, if you don't offer it to them, they're going to go find it somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
And when that happens, if it's not correct, now you're one step behind or two or three steps behind. So now we have to correct their thought process as we're re-educating them on how it truly is or the way that our practice does it. And then we can move forward. But it's exactly what you said. I mean, patients are looking for it. We know that they're there and we know that they're biting on the hook. They want that bait. The bait is, in a good way, the content. And they want that content.
Oh, yeah, totally. I want to go back to consents for a minute because we talked about it briefly, but I think a lot of times we forget how important that is. It educates, but at the same time, how easy is it on TouchMD?
Oh,
I
my
mean,
gosh.
seriously, they could do it at home or they could do it in the office or they could do it in the waiting room. And it's all digital. And guess what? The practice doesn't have to scan anything. They don't have to shred any paper. And then, we don't have to worry about it being missed because it's just convenient.
Yep.
And we're always looking for convenience. So I had to touch on that again because I really think it's important. You know
and
what
it
I
goes
mean?
right into Nextech. So it's going to be boom and TouchMD, boom and Nextech. It's everywhere you need to be. I want to ask you, we were talking earlier, just kind of catching up, and, we're excited about this episode today. And you actually started sharing with me an experience you had as a patient. And I'd love for you to share that with our listeners on how that helped. And it wasn't TouchMD. I mean, it was another experience that was beautifully crafted.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you get to be a patient. It's an interesting experience, especially when you're used to being behind the veiled curtain. And then all of a sudden you're the patient, So I had an experience several years ago where I had broken my leg and multiple surgeries later, because when I do it well. And so I did. I had several surgeries and my orthopedic surgeon surprisingly had it in such a format that it was easy for me to consume. He gave me a piece of paper. And okay, so it was a piece of paper, but what's fascinating about it is one sheet of paper and all these QR codes. So I was able to go home, scan that QR code. It opened up and gave me all this information that was
Amazing.
In a video format. Some of it was just as simple as showing me how I was going to have to use equipment after my surgery because I wasn't going to be walking. And I thought, what a unique way to do it. I didn't have to go out to the internet and find it. And of course, I had done a lot of work searching for things because when someone tells you you're going to have surgery and you know you're going to have it, the first thing you do is you go look for everything you can about it.
You do your homework.
And I did as much studying as I could. And there was a lot of things I couldn't find. But then when he gave me this, I almost wish he would have given it to me 3 months before he gave it to me because I had to wait a while before I could get my surgery. But it was really intriguing to me to be able to sit there with that QR code, get education about the procedure, get education about my post-op, the different ways that I would have to take care of myself. And there's, as simple as after someone has Mohs surgery and there's wound care instructions that are video format.
Yeah.
It's
next level.
It's next level.
It really is.
It has resonated with me for a very long time. That's why I was telling you about it because I had an experience that was so positive, and it was an orthopedic practice. I wasn't even someplace that was aesthetic in any nature. So they weren't even trying, but they had realized the need. And you know what? I think we just have to bite the bullet. And as aesthetic practices, we've got to dig in and think about how do we make it better for our patients?
Yeah.
How do we make it easier for our staff? How do we automate? How do we become more efficient?
Yeah. So first off, thank you for sharing that with me. And it's actually, now as you're telling it to me again, it's actually making me remember I kind of had a different experience as a patient. So my hair was receding and I was in the market to get, hair surgery, and I decided on getting NeoGraft. And when I had chosen my doctor, I had assumed he had to have something amazing or something easy at least to send me my consents and my pre and post and how do I send you my photos? And it was all compartmentalized and separate. And this is 4 years ago. And I couldn't, number one, I was so excited to show him TouchMD, which he ended up signing up for TouchMD, which is great.
Good job.
But number two, I couldn't believe the hassle as a patient. I'm like, wait, you sent me an email and then I'm supposed to print this out, sign it, and bring it in, or do it when I come in. And then you sent me my pre and post, so I have to go search for my email for my pre-op instruction and find it. I'm like, what? And then, hey, take all these different photos that you sent me an email instead of take the different angles and then email those or text those to us, and then we'll look at it. And it was just the craziest experience because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have solutions for you for all these different things. I couldn't believe it.
So complex.
So complex. And on the patient side, I mean, even me in the software world for the last 12 years, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wait, doesn't everybody? Imagine if a patient that's never been in the industry, it's their first time, and doesn't matter whether they're a teacher or a firefighter or even if they're in software sales, if they have that type of experience, that's a reflection on your practice. They're from the start, even if you're an amazing surgeon, if you're an amazing provider, it's not the best look right off the bat where it's like, oh, wow, this doesn't really feel buttoned up. Is this their first time? Maybe they've only been in practice for a couple of years. And I'm like, oh, no, they've been in practice for 15 years. And it's a reflection. Patients feel when you're buttoned up with technology, they can sense it. They can feel that you're buttoned up right out of the gate.
Well, I mean, there's so much competition.
Yep.
And people can really tell a difference these days. And they want that experience that's going to be next level.
Yeah.
And I think we just overlook it sometimes. So, you know, I think about all of the great things about the product and what it does for you. And it just, you know, I just want to say it is next level.
It really
you
is.
You just got to go after it. So. Yeah. It was great, Tyler, talking to you today.
Yes, I could probably go on and on. I'm sitting here like, I've got 3 more questions. Wait, just kidding. Well, Robin,
more to come.
Yes, more to come. More to come. Robin, thank you so much. It's been amazing as always. I always love getting to hang out with you and to jam out on these podcasts with you. So thank you for all that you do and for your friendship to me. So
awesome. I appreciate it. And thank you.
Thanks for listening to Aesthetically Speaking, the podcast where beauty meets business, presented by Nextech. Follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Links to the resources mentioned on this podcast are available in your show notes. For more information about Nextech, visit nextech.com, or to learn more about TouchMD, go to touchmd.com. Aesthetically Speaking is a production of The Axis. THEAXIS.io.